Good afternoon. I'm Ling, and the topic we are going to argue is the young people of today are less concerned with manners than the old generation. And I agree with the statement because nowadays parents, the education of the family is different. Parents try to close with their children and be friend with their children. So sometimes they will ignore the manners between them, and when the children at outside they will forget and not used to be in manners with others. For the example, when it always happen in the classroom when the tutor is speaking in front of the student, but some of the student was talking, and sometimes the student were eating in the lecture. So this what I saw in the classroom, and this is the reason why I agree with the statement.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sofian, and I agree with this topic. In my opinion, the young people of today are less concerned with manners than the older generation, because I consider that the young people are less respectful than in the past. The way of speaking is clearly different. For example, the way of speaking with the parents is clearly less respectful than in the past. Moreover, there are some colloquial words and begins gates which are used by the new generation which didn't exist formerly or were taboo. Then we can take the example of the bus. Formerly, when a whole person was entering in the bus, most of the young people left the seat to the whole person. Whereas nowadays, the young people prefer to be seated down, to be quiet, to listen music, to chat with their friend, instead of to leave the seat to the whole person. Moreover, some manners clearly important in the past have almost disappeared. For example, don't speak with the mouth full, don't eat with the hands or the finger, don't interrupt someone to answer the phone, take off the beanie and the cap in the classroom, wait everyone before to eat, etc. As a result, we can see some manners have been forgotten. Some manners clearly important in the past have been forgotten by the young people, and that's why the young people are less concerned with manners than the older generation.
Hi everybody, my name is Giuseppe, and I don't agree with this statement that declares the young people of today are less concerned of manners than older generation. I think young people are polite, kind. They are concerned like older generation, and this is just a stereotype, a wrong vision, a wrong idea about new generations. For example, I look at my personal experience when I drive my car and I see a pedestrian who wants to cross the street. I let him to cross the street. I stop him. Or when I'm going to university, I go in and I hold the door to let other people to go in. And for this reason, I think that young people are concerned like other people.
Good afternoon, my name is Nerea, and I also disagree with the statement that the young people of today are less concerned with good manners. I say that because, for example, in my experience and in general, when I go to a supermarket and I buy some things and I have a lot of things to buy and there's people in the queue, I always say, you go first if you have less things to buy than me. Or if people have to help me with the bags, they always say me if they can help. And or for example, in my neighborhood, the small children always hold me the door and say me good morning or good night. and they always say sorry or excuse me or thank you when it's possible or when it is necessary. And in the bus here and in Spain, when I see when a woman pregnant, a pregnant woman, sorry, I always let her in my seat, or I see people that say you can sit here because of this. So I think that we are concerned that we have to be polite with people, and I don't think that we are not concerned about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not so sure every young people are not manners, but I think the manners is depends on the generation, like young people or old generation. I think it's depend of the individual conversation, what they learn it for young, what they learn it from their parents. So this I'm not totally agree with young people are not manners. Yes.
And also, I tend to think that it depends on the education. Also, I think the nowadays the parents attach less importance to manners than in the past, and moreover, the social network revolution, the new program TV, for example, reality TV, played an important role in the manners of the young people. For example, when you see in this program, in this TV program, in the reality TV, some young people who are speaking really bad, who insult each other, and the teenager or the youngest try to identify to these young people, speak the same language, have the same clothes, etc.
Yes, but I totally agree with you about the education, because we are concerned about what we are seeing in TV or what we are hearing in the street, or we can decide if we want to say that kind of words or if we don't want to. And I think it's more than educational thing than generation. So you can see what you want it to be, but you can really decide this word, I'm going to say this word or not, or I'm going to use this language in the street or in the class, something like this. But I agree with you in the using of phone and the music and headphones, because now people use more technological devices than in the past, and perhaps sometimes they forgot that they are interacting with people, and they just take their mobile phone and just forget the person who they are from. So
I don't think about just your personal education. I think to totally your environment. For example, if I am a teenager, I'm inclined to be influenced to other people, like my classmate, my friend, not just my teacher or my parents, my family. And I think this problem can be caused to the progress. For example, we have other principle that rules our life. For example, the money, or we have other virtual relationship, such as the social network, not just the true relationship on the street. That's my opinion.
Yes, I mean as well. But you don't feel that some manners have disappeared? For example, nowadays we can see often one person who interrupt someone to answer the phone.
yeah, I
Send
agree
a
with
message.
Sometimes you can see
Yes.
one person in the classroom who keep the cap or
Yes.
the beanie.
Yes, yes.
Right.
I
Or in the
totally
church.
agree with
Church.
this
Yeah.
topic. And you say something about the respectful words and the ways of speaking. I think that it is probably that the way of speaking have changed in the time and the time that I agree with you
I think
in this statement. So
Yeah.
probably you are right.
I think even the their speaking ways are different, but it doesn't mean they are not manners, because I think different generation have the different
Yes. Totally.
speaking style that
Yeah,
we
totally.
cannot always follow the old generation style. So I think it not doesn't mean it they are not manners.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
We are talking about the second topic, which declares that in terms of safety, it is far safer to live in the countryside than in a city. I agree with these topics because I think that living in countryside is better in terms of safety. You need, for example, it's better to eat and grow local products. It's more healthy. You don't use pesticide, preservatives, other chemical products. Even if you live in the countryside, it's less stressful than living in a city. For example, you don't have to deal with traffic jam, pollution, irritating noises. So for this reason, I think that living in countryside is better than living in a city.
Yeah, I totally agree with Giuseppe, and with the statement that it is better in terms of health to live in the countryside, because, as Giuseppe said, because of pollution, because there is a lot of pollution, smokes, because of the fabrics, a lot of fabrics in the city, and probably in the countryside you are more in contact with nature, and it makes you want to go running, go cycling, or go walking to the park or to whatever. If you have to go for the market to shop or something like that, probably you will go walking or not in the car like in the city, because if you want to go to any side, you go driving or in the bus, and it is healthy for us to make some sport, and yeah, it's less stressful to live in the countryside, of course, and you have more cleaner and fresh air in the countryside than in the city, and it is less probably to get a disease if you live in this type of environment.
I consider that in terms of health, it's not safer to live in the countryside, because the city is clearly closer to the hospital, to a police station, to ambulance station, to fire station. For example, if you have an emergency or a serious problem, the ambulance can more quickly act if you live in the city than if you live in the countryside, because because in the city the ambulance has the right to run a red light or has priority everywhere in the city. Whereas in the countryside, the ambulance will take more time to act and to come, because it's farther to the hospital and the ambulance station. Moreover, in the city, there are around eight or seven pharmacies, different pharmacies, whom one or two opens night, and 4 or 5 different doctors. While in the countryside, there are only 1 or 2 pharmacies and 1 or 2 doctors. So if you live in the city and you are sick, you can avoid to wait a long time your sickness or to see a doctor. To conclude, I understand that it's safer to live in the countryside, because you can avoid the urban stress, pollution, noise, traffic, etc. However, the city has an advantage that the countryside doesn't have. It's the healthcare proximity.
And I agree with Sofian. Living in the city is better than the countryside because living in the city there's a lot of leisure or the entertainment places like club, cinema or gym or the shopping mall. And I think it's the way to let people to reduce their stress. In if a pupil who stay happy always is good, is also healthy for our body. So I think living in city is better and it's easy to meet a lot of new friends. And when we feel stressed, we can go for the shopping and buy something. And when we are so feel when we want to relax, we can go for the gym or have some party with friends. So I think living in the city is better than countryside.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I reckon that the proximity is totally better in the city than in the countryside. But if you think, as you say, that the ambulance act quickly than in the countryside, of course, I agree with you. But if you think about the probabilities of get a disease in the countryside, taking in account of the factors that the air, the pollution, the stress, it is less probably to get a disease in the countryside. So perhaps I don't have to go to the hospital so frequently than people that live in a city. So probably in this sense it's better to live in the countryside also. And about the facilities and the places that you can go in the city, of course there is a lot of places that you can go in the city, but probably you will go in the bus, as I said before, or driving. And in the countryside everything is near, and you probably go cycling or walking. I think is something that makes you be in contact with nature. Well, it's good for us.
I see what you mean, but imagine if you are sick.
Yeah.
You don't prefer to live close to
Yeah.
hospital, or live in
Yeah.
a place where there are numerous doctors and several pharmacies. I think it's safer to your health to live
Yes,
close.
definitely it's safer for me to be closer to the hospital. But if you think that if I live in the countryside, I have less possibilities to get a disease, probably I prefer to go to the hospital in a city once a year than 3 or 4 times in a year.
I agree with you, but I think sometimes everything happen in suddenly.
Yeah.
When if we need emergency, then I
Yes.
think living in city is better than countryside, because in the city they got professional doctor, professional facility. So living in countryside there are fresh air, but sometimes if the air is polluted, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's not really healthy.
I think everyone can recognize that living in a city is more polluted than living in a countryside. Thinking if you have to grow your children, if you are in the city, you have more probably that they have a breathing problem, or they have a disease. And about the facilities, yeah, I recognize city have a lot of entertainment, but you can enjoy your free time even in the countryside. For example, you can go to do sports or enjoy your free time with playing with your pet,
Yeah, of course.
walking.
I
Yeah.
totally agree with
Uh,
you in that.
I think the best solution is living in the countryside, but not so far from the city.
Okay.
And you said that in the countryside you can find local product, healthy product. That you know that in the city there are some supermarkets which propose local food and as well as
Yeah,
healthy
I think
food,
they are very
biological
expensive.
food.
Yeah,
They are expensive.
I used to go to a supermarket in the city, and the products are much more expensive than in the countryside because I used to go to both places, and I think that it is easier to go to the countryside to get
Okay, to grow up
this
your
kind of food because it is easier to produce it, you know, and you
It's
have to
easier
transport
and
it
cheaper.
to the city, so
Yes.
it is cheaper and easier. So in this sense, it is healthy to live in the countryside, and I think it.
But I think sometimes it's not really, not actually so healthy for plant your food yourself, because sometimes the sand or what of the environment is polluted. So I think sometimes buying the food from outside is better than.
So yeah, of course you have to be careful with what you do, but I think in general it is better to live in the countryside because it has a lot of advantage. It is true that the proximity of the city is further better than in the countryside, but in general I think that it is healthier than living in the countryside.
Yes.
And you said that in the countryside you can run with bicycle, but you know that in the city there are some parks where
Yes.
where you can running, where you
Yes,
can run,
of
play
course.
football,
There
the
is.
picnic as well.
Yeah, of course.
But I think we can find a solution. I think a tram line to connect the countryside and the city could be better.
Yes,
Yeah.
Green
this is a
transport,
good
for
point.
example,
Yeah.
to limit the pollution.
Yeah, yes, true. I agree with you. I think we are finished.